Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the September 28th, 2021 City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. The 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operations or rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint power agencies as the city may be a member or which relate to such utility enterprises. At this time, members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. At this time, I would ask that you turn off all your electronic devices on silent or turn them off. And Lynn, can you please call roll? Sure. But before that, I'd like to say Chair Webb and Commissioner Maish are excused from today's meeting.
Commissioner Bielski?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarchi?
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner Knox?
Here.
And Commissioner Granger?
Here.
All right, great. Commissioner Bielski, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is public comments. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record.
And then tell them the number again.
All right, at this time, we'd like to invite members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the August 24th, 2021 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, next on the agenda is the requests and presentations. First up, item 6.1, Roseville Electric Utility Monthly Update with Electric Director Michelle Bertolino.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, I have a very brief update for you. First of all, I wanted to brief you. Last meeting, you received a brief presentation on the 2 natural gas power producing units that are out that were installed by the
agenda is the requests and presentations.
State
6.1,
that were that the state of California, through the California Department of Water Resources, requested that they be allowed to place out by the Roseville Energy Park. And so in the course of about a month, the City Council approved all the agreements. We negotiated the agreements. The City Council approved the agreements, and the units were installed and became operational last week. They are only to be used during very significant grid emergencies, only probably half a dozen times a year, most likely, and even when they are run, they would only be for maybe 4 hours or 6 hours. So they're not going to be run that often, but they are there for an emergency. The state is paying the utility a little over $9 million for use of the site for 2 years and a few months, so through December of 2023. And at the end of that time, we will have the ability to purchase the units, one or both of the units. The first unit we can purchase for $1 million, and the second unit, I think we ended up at a $10 million number, and the units are worth significantly more than that. So if as we get into closer to 2023, it looks like that might be something we want to do. We would definitely come to the PUC as well as to the city council and discuss whether or not that would be a good opportunity for the city. And then the city, our staff, the utility staff are running and operating those units based upon the direction from the state when they're needed, and we are being reimbursed for all costs for that. So, secondly, we just wrapped up a very big project for us, and it's our new dispatch center that's located in our current headquarters building. And this is a project that we had been talking about for probably at least 10 years, and probably seriously about 5 years ago. And we had our first dispatcher working out of it today, and we'll come back to you later with a presentation on kind of the befores and afters, but it's a pretty significant technological upgrade for us. Very impressive dispatch center, and it'll give us the ability to monitor more closely the grid as more and more people start adopting electric vehicles and more things are coming onto the grid, so we can better manage that as well as provide information to our customers on outages. And lastly, what I'd like to mention is we do have a new incentive program for customers who would like to change out their current natural gas appliances for electric. And they can go onto our website to see what those incentives are. And Commissioner Webb had asked us if we were going to be having those because I think SMUD or PG&E has those. And so unfortunately, she's not here tonight, but if she's watching, we do have those available on our website now. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do any commissioners have questions for the staff at this time? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right. Members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. All right, next item on agenda, item 6.2, Roseville Electric proposed rate case with Electric Assistant Director Sean Mitchum and Financial Advisor Eric Campbell.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Sean Matcham here, Assistant Director. We have a action item for the Commission's consideration this evening. Normally you hear informational updates from us, but this is an item that requires your action, and we're recommending the Commission's approval or recommendation of this agenda item. It is an important initiative for us at Roseville Electric. It relates to our electric rates and a proposal for us to raise our electric rates on all our customer classes beginning next year. You may recall back in July, we provided commissioners with an informational briefing on this subject matter. And at that time, we were just beginning the outreach for this initiative. And we briefed our commissioners, we briefed our council. That was just before we started our public outreach with stakeholder meetings, key account meetings, and other engagement through neighborhood associations. And so over the last several months, we've done a lot with respect to this rate proposal, and we're excited to bring it through this commission. The public outreach process has culminated, and we've conducted a lot of outreach. Eric will talk a little more about that later in the presentation. But it concluded earlier this month, and Eric and I have a presentation here for you that we'll step through, and much of the information may look familiar to you from our earlier briefing, but this does represent what we took through our community outreach and meeting with our major customers. So with that, I'll kick it off, and Eric will chime in as we move along. One of the things, as part of any key initiative that we advance at the electric utility, one of the things we always like to do is make sure that we align with what goals and priorities that the City Council establishes. We operate as a full-service city, so one of the things, the City Council is our governing body, and so as they set goals and strategies, we really make sure, ensure that the initiatives and priorities at the utility really aligns well with what the City Council sets as their priorities. And so just real quick, where this rate proposal fits into that process. As you'll see here on the slide, City Council goal to remain fiscally responsible in a changing world, That's supported by balancing utility operating costs to maintain competitive rates. And then below here, the last item is really our electric department mission, and that is to deliver safe, reliable electricity at competitive rates with exceptional service. This rate case process, the financial review that's taken part as part of this, the engagement with our council, the engagement with our commission and our customers is all geared towards making sure that we can deliver on that mission, and that this rate proposal is really core to delivering on this mission. And it's essential for us as we look at that, delivering on that mission, that we maintain competitive rates and we continue to position the utility in a place of financial strength. The second item that I'll note with respect to the overarching policies that are set by City Council relates to our rate policy alignment. There are a number of things here that I'll touch on quickly, but they are important for us as we define a path forward and we shape what our rates are for our electric service in our community. And so I'll touch briefly on a few of these because I think they're important for the Commission to understand, and they're important for our public to understand. Cost-based policy, first item here. This really gets to the core of our business model. We're a not-for-profit organization, and so when we look at our operations and we set rates around our operations, it's really geared to recover our cost, nothing more and nothing less. Adequacy policy. When we look at the costs that we need to recover through rates, we want to make sure that that revenue, the costs, really reflect what we need to do to operate the utility in a reliable and cost-effective manner. Fair and equitable policy. We have 5 different customer classes. Eric will touch on it a little later in the details of the proposal, but when we look at our different customer classes, we really look at those as different business lines, and we want to make sure that each customer class is paying their fair share of how they use our electric system and how we provide electric service to them. So we try to minimize that cross-subsidization across classes as much as we can, and that's really central to the fair and equitable policy you'll note here. Stability policy. This really speaks to when we need to go for a rate adjustment, we want to make sure we do it in small incremental amounts. And that's really key for us to protect our customers, our residential customers, our business customers from rate shock. So when we do need to raise rates, we look at doing it over an extended period of time with small adjustments. And that's precisely what we're proposing as part of this rate proposal. And again, you'll hear more about that as we move forward. An item that we also like to highlight with respect to our business model and how we operate this utility is really to represent the value proposition of a community-owned or municipal-owned utility. And there's some things here that are very important for us here in Roseville and how we serve this community. Here in Roseville, we're afforded some of the lowest electric rates in the region. We have some of the highest electric reliability in California and even nationally. These are 2 items that our organization takes tremendous pride in. We place a lot of emphasis on making sure that we run this organization like a business and that we invest in the infrastructure to make sure that we can maintain reliability to our businesses and residents in Roseville. Local control. This is really core to being a municipal entity and to our business model. The decisions, the governance, the items that impact how we run our business and we engage with our community, those decisions are made here by our city council. And that's of utmost importance as we look at how we serve the community. At the end of the day, we're a community service provider, and we want to make sure that the decisions that we make at the organization align well with not only what the city council sees as priorities, but we align them with what's happening in this community. Those shared community goals as kind of alluded to earlier. Another example of that is really tailored customer programs. We get to make decisions here locally, here in Roseville, to help businesses and residents here in Roseville specifically based on what we see happening in the community. Over the last year and a half through the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had a great opportunity to really define programs and engage with our community and engage with our customers to serve them the best way we can. And that's just part of the value proposition of being a municipal-owned utility and community-owned. And always like to take the time to mention this whenever we're in public because I believe that this business model has really provided tremendous benefit to the community and to our customers. With that as a high-level overview in terms of the policies that influence this rate case, the process, and how we align with, those are how we align with our city council goals and priorities. I'll turn it over to Eric to speak to some of the specifics with regard to what we're proposing, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have an opportunity to answer questions and discuss next steps.
Thank you, Sean. So bill comparison with neighboring utilities. As Sean mentioned earlier, we have 5 customer groups. That's residential, small commercial, medium commercial, large commercial, and industrial. This is meant to give you kind of a view of how we compare from a rate perspective against our neighboring utilities, in particular PG&E and SMUD. If you look at that top row there, the residential row, you can see the average residential customer for Roseville Electric. Average bill is about $112 a month. That same customer, if they were a customer of PG&E, would be paying about $217 a month. That's a 48% difference, so almost 50%. So pretty significant. That same customer, if they were a customer of SMUD, their bill would be about 14% higher at $130. So pretty significant there. And this slide's really meant to illustrate the competitive rates that we have, delivering on that mission that Sean mentioned earlier. And also, we're very proud of this and the value that we deliver. It's pretty significant. Overall, our customers' rates, our customers enjoy roughly $100 million in savings when you compare our rates overall across all classes with PG&E. So it's substantial. That's money that stays right here in the community. And then finally, I'll mention that our proposed rate increase will have no significant or meaningful change on these percentages. There's some rate increases in the hopper for these utilities as well. So we'll be right in line in terms of maintaining these percentages. Rate history. You may recall that we haven't had a rate increase at Roseville Electric for 7 years. You have to go all the way back to July of 2014. We had a 2% increase back then on the usage rate being the consumption piece of our bill. And we'll talk more later about the why and how we've been able to hold the line for so long and why it's necessary for an increase at this point in time. We are proposing I'll say a 2-prong increase, one on the usage rate, the consumption piece, which is the variable component of our rate, and then the fixed piece, which we call the basic service charge. So you'll see more about that later on in the presentation. Give you an idea where the basic service charge is on the bill and then also the consumption-based piece. This is a typical residential customer bill. In the light blue highlighted box, it's entitled Residential Basic Service Charge. You see that $26 on the far right there? That's the fixed fee. That's the fee that funds our fixed cost, like reading meters, answering phones, things like that. Things that are there whether you use the service or not. The residential electric tier 1 and tier 2, that's the volume piece, that's the consumption piece. We're also proposing an increase on that part of the rate as well. We're not proposing any changes to the rate structure. We're just looking at increasing those 2 components. Proposed rate actions. So we go through an extensive cost of service analysis to understand our revenue requirements, what we're going to need over the next several years, in particular the next 5 years. And so we go through that process of, understanding our cost structure, our forecasted cost structure, if you will. We're not trying to recover costs we've already incurred. This is all forward-looking. This is all how we view the future in terms of what our cost is going to be. So again, we have 5 customer types. Residential, we have 57,000 residential customers. So on the usage rate side, we are proposing a 2-year increase of 2% in year 1 and 2% in year 2. And then on the fixed fee, the basic service charge, we're proposing a $2 increase in year 1 and a $2 increase in year 2. Now, the current basic service charge for residential customers is $26. The combined increase of the $2 in year 1 and year 2 takes that to $30 a month. So overall, when you take into consideration the usage rate increase and the fixed fee increase for residential customers, the average residential bill will increase by approximately $7 on a monthly basis. Small commercial, we have 5,700 small commercial customers. And again, we're proposing a 2% increase in year 1, 2% increase in year 2. That, again, that's on the usage rate. And then $3 on the fixed fee in year 1 and $3 in year 2 on the fixed fee for small commercial. The small commercial group currently pays $38 a month. The proposed increases on the fixed fee would take that to $44 a month. When you take into consideration both the usage rate increase and the monthly basic service charge increase, the average small commercial customer will see their bill increase by approximately $11 per month. Medium commercial, we have about 1,200 medium commercial customers. Here we're actually proposing a 1.5% increase in year one and a 1.5% increase in year two. Obviously, that's different than the proposal for the residential and small commercial, large commercial industrial as well. And that's really a byproduct of the medium commercial group using our infrastructure less than the other groups. As Sean mentioned earlier about the fair and equitable policy, we're really trying to break down our cost structure based on how customers use the infrastructure. And what we find is the medium commercial group is using it less. And so you're seeing a reduction in their rate there. Again, we're not proposing any sort of increase to their fixed fee. It's currently at $65 a month. It's going to remain at $65 a month. So the average medium commercial customer, after the 2-year implementation of the proposed increase, they'll see their bills go up approximately 3%. Large commercial, we have about 23 of those. And again, we're back to the 2% in year one and year two on the usage rate. And then on the fixed fee, we're proposing a $20 increase in year one, a $20 increase in year two. They're currently paying $521 a month. This proposed increase will take it up to $561 per month. Overall, when you factor in both the usage rate and the monthly basic service charge over 2 years, they're looking at a 4% increase in their monthly bill after the 2-year implementation. And then finally, the industrial group, we have approximately 10 of those. Again, we're back to the 2% in year one and year two on the variable rate, on the usage rate. And on the basic service charge, we're proposing a $25 increase in year one and a $25 increase in year two. They currently pay $591 a month. These proposed increases take that number to $641 a month. When you take into account both the usage rate increase and the basic service charge, this group will experience about a 4% increase in their monthly bill. And year one, just for clarity, year one would be effective on January 1, if approved, January 1 of 2022. And then year two would be effective on January 1 of 2023, if approved. Idea of what the average bill will look like, a little bit more transparency on that. Residential customers, the current bill's on average $112 a month. After the 2-year implementation, you see it increases to $119 a month. That's at $7 I referenced on the previous page. Small commercial, currently at $154 a month. That'll increase to $165 a month. Again, that's the $11 I referenced on the prior page. Small commercial, those are banks, credit unions, businesses of that scale. Medium commercial, this is Whole Foods, DMV. This building is a medium commercial customer. They're currently just north of $3,100 a month. With the 2-year increase, they'd be just north of $3,200 a month, and this group is looking at a 3% increase overall. Large commercial, this is McKesson, Walmart, Macy's, customers of that size. Currently around $30,000 a month on average. After the 2-year implementation, they'll be just north of $31,000 a month. And again, this group's going to experience a 4% increase if the proposed increase is approved. Industrial, some of these customers are Kaiser, Sutter, Roseville, our wastewater treatment plants, TSI. Currently, they're around $150,000 a month. With the 2-year increase, that would take them to approximately $156,000 a month, or 4% over the 2-year implementation. So why is the rate increase needed? Increasing cost, no surprise there. Regulatory compliance and complexity. One of the big items here is our renewable portfolio standard. The state has some pretty aggressive carbon-free goals. The state is looking to be carbon-free by 2045. And really what that's creating in the energy market is kind of a seller's market, if you will, with respect to renewable supplies. There's a lot of utilities, whether it's IOUs or publicly owned, that are vying for similar assets, and so they're bidding up the prices as we look out into the future. And so that's really that's impacting our cost structure as we look forward. Labor, we want to pay competitive salary and benefits, to attract and retain the right talent. We're drawing from the same pool as SMUD and PG&E, so we need to remain competitive on that front. Sophistication of customer programs. Our business is changing. We need to think differently about it. We're looking at electric vehicles, charging stations, electrifying buildings, things like that. And so it's really become more complex from that standpoint in understanding how customers are going to be using our infrastructure going forward. Flat revenues, what does that mean? And we're going to get into more detail on the next slide on this in terms of dollars. But our revenues are forecasted to be flat over the next several years through FY25. And that may not sound like it makes sense, considering we're growing, adding about 800 to 1,000 customers a year. However, we're seeing really a reduction on a use per customer level, and it's really attributed to like energy efficiency programs, appliances, LED light bulbs, smart thermostats. Customers are much more savvy now with respect to their energy use, which is a good thing. Also, customer generation, rooftop solar, that's another consideration. And so we encourage and we embrace these technologies, but there's an impact on us. And so it really forces us to take a hard look at our cost structure, and especially the fixed fees, and making sure we're getting proper recovery on that component of the rate. 5-year financial forecast. And again, this is without the proposed rate increase. So this is if there's no new money approved through this process. That revenue line, you can see there in FY22, the first number there is $160.2 million. And again, I'm looking at FY22. And if you look at that row all the way out to FY 2025, the far right column, our revenue is forecasted to be just north of $161 million. So it's extremely flat over those 4 years. And that goes back to the revenue discussion on the prior page. Our operating expenses, you see those increasing over the next several years. Our capital is relatively predictable. It's a little bit lumpy. We're looking at ways to kind of smooth that out, but again, it's a byproduct of the business. What's most important on this slide is the net cash flow on the bottom row for FY23 through FY25. You can see FY23, the middle column there, has a shortfall of $10.5 million, meaning we're going to bring in $10.5 million less in revenue than we need to run the business. Now for FY24, it's $5.5 million, and then FY25, it's $6.8 million. So what do these numbers look like when we incorporate the rate increase? And I'm going to draw your attention right to that bottom row. You can see they've all improved dramatically. FY23 is still showing a negative number of $5.9 million. There's some one-time capital investments that are going to occur there that we can actually fund with existing reserves. And if you look out to 2024 and 2025, our numbers are quite flat. There's very little margin there. Sean mentioned earlier that we're not trying to make money. We're a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money, not trying to lose money. We're trying to hit the number on the spot. And you can see, how closely we're aligned there in terms of our revenues and our expenses. Actions to mitigate cost increases, what we've been doing over the past several years to hold the line, if you will. Energy procurement program. We have a very mature hedging program where we go out in the energy markets and lock up energy in advance. I mean, sometimes as long as 3 years out. We've been very successful at that. It's worked wonderfully for us. We don't know if we can maintain that beyond, the existing, 3-year outlook. Debt service, interest rates. No secret, interest rates have been low. A lot of refinancings with homes and things like that, but we've done the same thing. We've refinanced some debt. We've paid down some debt. Through those actions, we've been able to reduce our debt service by $4.5 million. And just to kind of put that in perspective, that would be a 3% rate increase for customers. That $4.5 million, we've been able to reallocate that to other cost buckets across the organization. Managing vacancies, we typically have 15 to 20 vacancies at any point in time. And some of it is a byproduct of recruiting, but some of it's intentional. Some of it's, happens during the budget and planning process where we intentionally leave positions open, just to see where the year takes us and if we can work with our existing resources. If a position comes open during the year, same type of scrutiny. We don't immediately refill it. We take a hard look at it and whether or not we need to actually backfill a position. And then lastly, cost discipline, actually culture of cost discipline, if you will. Sean used the phrase earlier, run like a business. That's a pretty popular phrase within electric. We're very forward-looking. I showed you the 5-year financial forecast earlier. We reference that often, for making decisions in the present, making sure we don't overcommit ourselves in the future. So it's really a tool to make informed decisions. And really, if you look back over our history and not asking for new revenue for the last 7 years, it's worked for us. So we're pretty proud of the discipline we have internal to the electric department. And then what happens if the proposed rate increase is not approved? Reduced investment in electric system reliability. We would probably dial back on some of the investments we make in our infrastructure. We wouldn't eliminate it entirely. But I want to remind you, earlier I made a comment that our cost structure is forecasted, and so we've assumed a certain service level in these rates. It's already built in. Any reduction in the proposed increase, could have an impact on service levels. And what does that mean? Responses to outages, to electric outages, it could be longer if we don't have the appropriate resources on board. Our maintenance program could become more reactive versus preventative. Reactive is more like when the check engine light comes on versus, preventative, changing the oil frequently. Decline in legislative and regulatory outreach effort. This is a city council priority. We're extremely impacted by the legislature. I mentioned the renewable portfolio standard earlier. We get hit with those types of things quite often, and we have to incorporate those into our cost structure. Reduction of economic development support. And again, we wouldn't eliminate this. We would probably dial it back, but we have partnered with the economic development team here at the city, and we've actually helped fund a partial position. Reprioritization of customer programs. Right now we're able to really move quickly on certain programs. We put together the bill credit program earlier this year in response to the pandemic to really lift up some of those customers that were hurting early on in the process. Those are some of the things that we'd have to maybe deprioritize through this process. And then lastly, and very important, is the erosion of our utility financials. We've been able to navigate the past 7 years without new money. And we've been able to position ourselves on strong financial footing at the same time. And we would hate to see that position that we've created erode, because we believe a healthy utility is good for customers. Community outreach. And this was, one of the really exciting parts of the rate proposal process. Being a community-owned utility, those are really our shareholders. And so, and plus, customer engagement, participation, it's an important, piece of this process, their feedback. We kicked off our public outreach at the beginning of August. It went approximately 5 weeks. We hosted 3 virtual public workshops. We had intended on doing 2 in person, but with the pandemic concerns, we moved all 3 to be virtual. Met with the chamber, met with Sun City Government Affairs. A lot of questions in that meeting. It was a fantastic meeting. We met with Arcona, our largest customers like Kaiser, Sutter Roseville, TSI. And of course, we had documentation and materials on our webpage and then social media. So what was the feedback? The feedback was very positive, very supportive, very appreciative of our rates, our service levels, a lot of recognition, a lot of compliments. And so it was really a pleasure to go through that process and hear that good feedback. And something else that came up quite often was, our planning around long-term energy needs. There was a lot of interest, on the customer's behalf on, how are we going to get energy in the future? They see the news with solar and, outages and things like that, and, how California's been impacted. And it was really good to hear that. And it means our customers are well informed, and we've done a good job to kind of keep them up to date on what's happening with the utility space. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Sean for the recommendation.
Thanks, Eric. It's a quick and short recommendation, but based on what we've presented, what you've heard from Eric, what we've gone through in our public outreach with the meetings with our community and customers, we are requesting and recommending the Public Utilities Commission approval of this rate proposal so that we can advance it to our city council. So that's simply it. We've been engaged with the community, as Eric said, and we haven't really heard any meaningful concerns on the merits of what we're proposing. And I think that's an important message for the commission. Eric alluded to it. Much of the inquiries or questions regarding this subject matter really were geared towards how we plan for the future. And so with the feedback that we've received from the community, with a very thoughtful process that went into these rate adjustments, we're prepared to recommend the commission's approval for the city council. Next steps for us would be to advance it to the council either at the last meeting in October 20th, and that would begin the first reading of what would be 2 readings before our city council. So late October, early November to go to council upon a recommendation from this commission. And so with that, we'll stop. That's our rate proposal. It's been an exciting process to go through. It's the first time we've gone through it in 7 years. And so that's what we have for you, and that's our recommendation. And I'll answer any questions. We'll answer any questions that you may have on this item.
I have a few questions. First one, is the city of Roseville treated just like a typical customer? Okay.
Same rates. Yes, same rates.
And then the next question, it's a 2-part question. Mm-hmm. Can or will the increase or the cost increase be used to purchase the generators from the state? And if so, are the generators part of the capital expense listed in the 5-year forecast?
Yeah, there's nothing built in this current capital program for those generators, but Michelle referenced earlier that $9 million that will be, paid for the site. That's money that we could redirect to purchase one of those units, and then we could come back at a future time to build in the second unit as well, if it made sense for us from a portfolio perspective.
Okay.
These units that you may purchase, that we just addressed, will this give us an opportunity, the city, to sell back more power? Is that the purpose for buying them, or is it just insurance? Because beyond the next few years, when we have the opportunity to buy them, we'd buy them for what reason? To help generate additional revenue, I presume.
I'll answer that. Yes, if we decide in a couple years that we want to buy them, it would be to provide us with increased energy, mostly during peak times.
Right, okay. Not just for ourselves, but for anybody that wanted to buy other little counties.
We only resource for our own needs. If we do happen to have a surplus, then we can sell it, but we don't purposely overgenerate necessarily to.
No, but if you have it and it's available.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
And what we are doing tonight is we are merely recommending to the city council. City council adopts the actual formal resolution and votes upon it.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. At this time, we'd like to invite any members of the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item. All right, members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. Okay, at this time, would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, next item on the agenda is item 6.3, Environmental Utilities Monthly Update with Environmental Utilities Refuge and Stormwater Manager Devin Whittington. Excuse me.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this update is going to be really brief. It's more or less to pay kudos to our residents because during the months of July through August, we conserved 10% of water without being in a mandatory. It was a voluntary reduction for the city here. So we just like to, congratulate our residents on that and everybody that lives in the city for doing such a good job of conserving water. And with that, that's all we have for our update this month.
Do any commissioners have questions for the staff at this time? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. All right, next item on agenda, item 6.4, Environmental Utilities Waste Service, SB 1383 update with Environmental Utilities Refuge and Stormwater Manager, Devin Whittington.
Thank you. So, SB 1383 was, I'll just go ahead and we'll just start off with go ahead to the next slide. Here we go. Sorry about that. So SB 1383 was approved in 2016. And the purpose of this, which we'll get to later, is to reduce climate pollutants. Regulations were developed over the next 4 years, and they were finalized in November of 2020. The regulations will take effect in 2022, and enforcement actions will occur in 2024. There is currently a piece of legislation on the governor's desk to defer enforcement regulations for this specific piece of legislature. He has yet to sign that, but if he does sign that, that will give us some deference on when they start enforcing these regulations. The purpose of SB 1383, like I mentioned earlier, is to reduce short-lived climate pollutants, and specifically we're talking about methane. So we're looking to reduce the amount of organics that are introduced into landfills that produce methane. So we must reduce the amount of organics landfilled by 75%. Jurisdictions will also be responsible to procure organically derived materials, and those are things like compost, mulch, energy produced from organics. So that would be like, for example, biomass, if we were to burn biomass and create electricity from that, and then also renewable gas. So that would be gas that's derived from like food waste, for example, at a digester. So the state has laid out very specific requirements to comply with SB 1383, and the ones that we have listed here are for, think of your residential customers here in Roseville. So for us to comply, here are the three options. One is a 3-container system that will include a container for organics. So this will be a trash container, a container for recyclables, and a co-collected container that contains food waste, food scraps, food soiled papers, and then also green waste. The 2-container organic waste collection systems are what we currently have. This will require us to have a high diversion organic waste processing facility, and this is our current system. And keep in mind, we currently do not have a high diversion organic waste processing facility. There's one of these in the state right now, and that's it. So we'll get more to that on the next slide. The last one's a single container, unsegregated. So this would be, for example, if we just used our current waste container and basically put everything in there, garbage, recycling, and organics. And that would also have to go to a high diversion organics waste processing facility. So the compliance strategies, what we're looking at here in Roseville is kind of a two-pronged approach. So we have a regional procurement effort right now with Western Placer, or with WATMA, Western Placer Waste Management Authority, who we are members of. And they're looking to put in a high diversion organic waste processing facility. That proposal is also going to require the proposers to provide an option for a 3-container system. So that's the system I mentioned earlier in the presentation. The city, we've also conducted 2 3-container pilot systems in the city, one in the Misty Wood area and one currently in the Solare area out in the west part of Roseville. And we had initial assumptions that people would not be too liking of a 3-container system coming from a mixed waste system. But what we found throughout the pilots is about 80% of the residents that participated in the pilot program, that's 400 residents per section of the pilot, 80% of them actually preferred that system. And what they really enjoyed about the system was having that extra container for cardboard and recycling and those other items that, a lot of us are ordering at home now, and we're generating a lot of cardboard. Something that will need some work if we do move to a 3-container system is the organics piece. That piece, we heard some interesting feedback related to odors and how to basically take that material out of the kitchen and put it into the green waste container. We're also looking at some city-owned processing options internally. We're kind of looking at those numbers to see how those could potentially help us do some things on our own. And then also diversifying disposal options. Currently, we take everything to Western Placer, and that's the sole location. And we have to do that because we have a mixed waste system, and that's the only place in the region that can process mixed waste. So we're looking at other options in the area if we were to move to a 3-container system where we could kind of mitigate some of the cost. And that concludes the presentation. I told you it'd be short, so if you have any questions.
If we do adopt a 3-container policy, would the 3 containers be mandatory, or would it be an option of the customer?
So it would be mandatory. So those compliance options laid out by the state, they're very specific in the criteria to get compliance. It's either having, the ones I mentioned, a 2-container system, a single container system, and both of those will need a high diversion organics facility, or a 3-container system, which that is a check the box system. So if we have that system in place and we're, instructing residents to place organics in the green waste and, recycling in the recycling container, then that gets us into compliance with SB 1383 just by doing that.
I imagine your initial comments are from your trial system is, oh my God, what are we doing? But it sounds like it resulted in major acceptance of the system.
It did, and we, at the beginning of it, so when we delivered the containers out to customers or residents, we had a lot of people call us, hey, what's this container for? I don't want it, take it back. But towards the end of the pilot, it completely reverse that, and people really like the capability to get rid of recyclable materials, and it gives them more space to get rid of those type of things, and they accepted it. There's still a few that don't like it. That's why it's 80%, not 100. So
Well, probably some are complaining of smell, I guess, odors, and maybe even rodents, more rodents, or insect infestation, I guess, in the
yeah. So we would convert the green waste to be collected weekly. So and during the pilot, we did collect it weekly to reduce vectors and to reduce odors. However, there's still that component. Some of the newer homes, they don't have a lot of green waste yet. So when you put your food waste in those containers, the only thing that is in there is food waste, and you don't have a green waste mixing with it to kind of absorb some of the moisture and mitigate some of the odors. So some of the things that we're looking at if we move to that system is finding a compostable plastic that meets the regulations so that can be used for organic crop application, meaning that plastic doesn't have contaminants in it and can be used for organics. And then also container cleaning. So we would look at a frequency of container cleaning, let's just say 3 times a year or more than that, depending on what we see. It will be a learning process for us going through this whole thing.
Do we know how much the city will have to contribute if a regional high diversion organic waste processing facility is built?
So I can't really get into too much specifics on this one because it is going through a procurement process, but I can say that it is more than we are paying now.
Okay.
So currently our tipping fees out there were $73 last year. They went up to $88 a ton to kind of buffer for the next rate increase, but we assume it's going to be higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between putting the organic waste into the landfill versus mixing it with green waste? Is it just airing out or not creating methane or something? I mean, how does that work?
So that's exactly right. So we'll still be producing carbon by composting that material, but when it goes into a landfill, that's an anaerobic process, and that creates methane, and that's what this regulation was meant for, with short-lived climate pollutants, so specifically for methane.
And don't landfills collect methane? And sometimes
They do. So what the state went after is landfills are only 75% efficient at collecting the landfill gas. So there's still 25% that gets into the atmosphere. So in addition to this reg is pretty intense. So there's also pieces for landfills, like for example, for intermediate cover, they have to put more cover than before. And intermediate cover is like you're going to go from one spot to the landfill. 6 months later, you're going to go back to that spot. So they're requiring landfill operators now to put more cover there to hold the methane in the landfill and hopefully be extracted by the gas extraction system.
These are all the rubber covers that go over, you see over some sophisticated landfills.
Yeah. So typically when you see that poly cover, that's actually a final cover. However, like you had just mentioned, some of the landfill operators now are using those poly covers as intermediate covers to try to capture some of that gas in there. And it creates kind of a problem because now you have a plastic membrane that if your gas system is not functioning properly, now that's going to fill up with gas, right? And that gas can catch on fire and do other things, so.
There are some landfills I know in Southern California that use that technology rather well
Yeah.
in collecting gas and saving a lot of money on the cost of electricity because they in turn generate electricity, burn gas,
Yeah.
fire through boilers, then through turbines.
So our regional facility does have a power generation facility there. So they take the landfill gas and they run it through basically just internal combustion engines, Caterpillar engines, and produce electricity that way.
Right.
When the city adapts the 3-container system, is that going to come at a cost to the customer?
So we increased cost by about 16% over a 2-year period. So 16% increases this last rate increase. If we move to a 3-container system, we're looking to get some cost savings on the tipping fee for the MSW, because rather than us, and MSW, that's just the garbage, rather than us process that material, we would just landfill that directly. We would process the recycling, and then the green waste would still be composted as it is now. So the cost, what we've analyzed so far, should be a slight savings to cost neutral.
Do we pretty much get rid of all the compost, or what happens to the compost?
Well, so
Sorry.
no, it's all good. These questions are great because this is how we're getting this information out. So part of the regulation is that the city will have to procure compost. So we will have to procure 0.08 pounds per person per year. So what that equates to is about 11,500 tons of material that the city, this jurisdiction, will have to procure. Some of the other options are, get renewable gas and electricity derived from wood products and organic products. That's something we're looking into because, think of where we're going to apply 11,000 tons of material to, if you convert that to yards, that's about 22,000 yards of material we'll have to find a use for in the city. So we're looking at a variety of options to comply with that, from energy purchases, some of the things that we're doing at our wastewater treatment plant with the fueling of the vehicles out there with that RNG, if that, helps us offset some of these requirements to procure that much material.
Any of it currently being used for like gardening or agricultural uses? Do you know?
Yeah, all the above. So out at Western Placer, they do sell to the public. So any member of the public can go purchase it out there. And then a lot of their big customers are the agriculture in the area.
Gotcha.
Okay, at this time, is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right, members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. All right, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is board member, commissioner, or staff reports. Are there any reports from the staff?
No reports here.
Question or comments from the commission? Does anyone have any items that they would like to suggest for future meetings? Okay, at this time, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.
Cardboard is a nightmare.
That's actually a pretty good presentation. Hold on.
Mine too.
I'm trying to think where I'm going to put a third can. I built my fence in my side yard all around 2 cans. I can make it. And I see we have one at work because I'm in the my old work, because it's in the county of Sacramento already, and we've never put one thing in that third dumpster, and because it kind of got thrown there, they said, okay, put this, this, and this, and there's pictures, and the pictures got ripped off, and we're like, we don't know what we're supposed to put in this can, so let's not put anything, because we don't want to get.